let's take a look at how compassionate infanticide is the greatest act of love a parent can show to their would-be child. So, moving on from the January 6th hearing, obviously the other big thing that's been going on in American politics, the thing that has been taking up a lot of people's attention because, once again, nobody really cares about Jan 6th anymore, has been the remarkable overturning by the Supreme Court of the Roe v. Wade decision from, what was it, 1971 or 73?
73.
73, was it? Yes, thank you. Which was the thing that put in place a federal law because of the precedent that was set, making it so that every single state has to provide abortion, and they can only determine their own limits of what the abortion can be up to, whereas now the states can decide by themselves whether or not they want to allow abortion in the first place, which, if you're aware of how America is supposed to work, is actually going much more in line with the original Federalist aims of the writers of the Constitution, maybe not Hamilton, but the rest of them certainly. And so this is actually a big win for America if Americans knew anything about the founding of their country or the history or the ideals that it was based on. And of course we have the Democrats, who are prime suspect number one for being completely historically illiterate, not understanding that this is how America was supposed to work in the first place. And as a result, we have had a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing where they were talking about whether this was right and proper and truly moral to restrict the rights of women to murder their babies. Before we go any further, let's take a look at this recent video where Josh did an interview with Deborah Powney. You can check this out on the site or on YouTube, where they were talking about men experiencing domestic abuse. And I think this is relevant because, of course, who is the one person often left out of the table on discussions of abortion? Why, it is the men who might want to be fathers, the men who might want to have children, the men who perhaps if they'd knocked somebody up on a one-night stand might be willing to take responsibility for the child, which I understand is not a big amount of people, but still those people don't get their voices heard because it's only the woman's decision after all. And just to tell everybody as well that tomorrow Connor and I will be doing a book club on Michael Knowles' Speechless, which by the time this is out on YouTube, you will be able to catch live. It's for premium members at 3:30 on July 15th, British summertime. And I think this is relevant, one, because a lot of what we're talking about right now will go into semantics and language games where people try and reframe reality using the language that you speak. And also there is, as far as you've told me, because I've not finished the book yet, quite a large section going over the original decision of Roe v. Wade, which should be very interesting, so check that out if you get the opportunity. Anyway, let's carry on. So the Daily Wire has a good article talking about what's been going on in this Senate committee meeting. And for anybody who watched the podcast yesterday, you will have seen a particular clip from it that Callum and I showed, wherein a law professor from Berkeley told Senator Josh Hawley that it was in fact transphobic that he was questioning her on whether women are in fact able to be pregnant or if men as well are. Josh Hawley, of course, had the sensible, responsible position of only women can get pregnant, to which he was accused of transphobia. So this is where the conversation is, not just in the streets, not just online, not just on Twitter, but in fact in the massive, greatest political offices of the US. So
it really did remind me of Solzhenitsyn's stories about the people who were thrown in the gulags, and even still then they maintained a commitment to the party line, where there's no demand for logical consistency, but to stay at the end point, you have a utilitarian approach to the truth, and so you just keep, you're a sophist, you just keep moving the goalposts as to what's actually being discussed, so you can maintain your illogical conclusion, and it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, and it just makes you look like an insane person.
Yeah, I think you're right in describing it as utilitarian, because I think the greatest happiness principle is behind all of this. It's the impetus behind the bike cook meme, the idea that, well, yes, it's pretty sad that my baby might be dead now, but hey, I don't have to worry about raising it now. Therefore, my happiness that I'm experiencing right now is of greater value than the sadness that comes with the baby not being born anymore. So, yeah, utilitarianism has been a scourge on human morality, as far as I consider it. But anyway, let's read through a little bit of this. So, Democratic witnesses during the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing this week gushed over abortion as an act of love and self-care. And we do have the clips for that we'll get to in a moment, don't worry. The hearing was aimed at discussing abortion and the legal consequence of the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which overturned Roe v. Wade, effectively kicking back abortion restrictions to the states themselves. In another shocking moment from the hearing, Planned Parenthood's Dr. Colleen P. McNicholas called abortion an act of love. During the hearing on Tuesday, GOP Senator Josh Hawley, just to give everyone a reminder of that clip we played, notably had a contentious exchange with abortion rights advocate and University of California at Berkeley law professor Kyra Bridges, who refused to say only women can get pregnant and condemned Hawley as transphobic. Many women, she said, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy, so at least she's willing to concede that. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy.
No eggs.
Yeah,
Empty egg carton.
Yeah, this is not breaking news to anyone who's been paying attention, but apparently this is something that needs to be stated. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
Nope.
Well, depends how far along their surgeries these trans men are.
There are
sadly.
delusional people who think that they are the opposite sex that are still capable of pregnancy, but that does not make you the sex that you claim to be, nor particularly fitting to be a parent.
No, I would be very, very concerned about people raising children when you're like that. I want to recognise that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognising them. The professor charged, later adding that Hawley was denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know they exist.
Believe me, we see you.
Yes, you make it very hard not to see you.
Yes.
And Daily Signal did an article on 5 things to take away from this Senate hearing, which I think sums up quite a bit of it quite nicely. So the hearing began with a clip introduced by a Senator Dick Durbin, who is a Democrat of Illinois, who called the decision by the High Court to overturn Roe unprecedented.
Well, that's just untrue.
Well, of course,
because the Roe decision itself was unprecedented, so therefore we're returning it to precedent.
But the video presentation notably used the word woman to describe who would be most affected, and then we see, of course, just saying that women aren't the only ones who can get pregnant, so apparently I'm most affected. But then again, if somebody aborted my child with my permission, I would feel a little bit affected by that, but that's not what they're referring to. Senator Tom Cotton, who is a Republican, focused on the harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence made against the Supreme Court justices since the May 2nd leak of a draft of the Dobbs ruling and in the weeks since the official ruling was issued. Over the last few months, he said, we've seen a marked increase in violence and intimidation by pro-abortion groups. We saw people protesting outside of Kavanaugh's house, for instance. Left-wing mobs have gathered outside the homes of Supreme Court justices to try to intimidate them and affect their decision on the Hobbs case in a blatant violation of federal law. And note as well, the person who leaked that initial decision still has not been investigated, still has not been found, still has not been charged for breaking federal laws.
Well, neither was the feminist group who stormed the Capitol during Kavanaugh's confirmation because they were so afraid he was going to institute the Handmaid's Tale. Not spoken about very much. People
Well, once
didn't really
again,
get in trouble for it.
these are peaceful protests.
Yeah, of course.
These are peaceful protests. We've got different standards for those. And he continues saying that, the weak and hopelessly partisan Attorney General Merrick Garland refused to enforce federal laws. Pregnancy resource centres are non-profit organisations, because we go on to how Elizabeth Warren is saying that we need to get rid of pregnancy resource centres now because apparently they're evil because they don't just immediately stab you in the gut the second you walk through the door. They in fact try and help you with your pregnancy and maybe provide you with baby clothes for different stages of the baby's development after they've been born. But that's the problem, isn't it? They want to help you give birth to the baby and then raise that baby, whereas they should really be helping you stab that baby. Take it.
That's going to get clipped.
Yeah. In the aftermath of the decision to overturn Roe, many of these centres have been vandalised or attacked. Centres have had their windows smashed and vulgar pro-abortion phrases spray-painted on their walls, and some radical activists have taken to firebombing the centres with Molotov cocktails. But of course, will we see a hearing of Elizabeth Warren's volatile comments about how we need to shut these places down, inspiring this kind of violence? Of course we won't.
Well, all you ever hear about is, pro-life terrorists, and this is same thing with over in the UK. They're trying to create free speech buffer zones around abortion centres, so you can't protest or discuss abortion issues within about 150 yards, I think, or was it feet? I can't remember which one it is, around an abortion centre. And the reason given was they said, oh, there's going to be, even though there's not been any acts of pro-life terrorism on British soil yet, we could import it from America. Would you like to note to me on the run-up to Roe v. Wade where the pro-life terrorism was versus an actual group that was harassing Supreme Court justice houses and threatening to kill them?
Guess it's just a mystery. And as well as that, I've had many conversations since this came about, because I have gone from being rather indifferent to abortion to becoming very strictly pro-life.
Good man.
Regarding this whole thing. Because the fact of the matter is that the whole point of all of this, like you say, free speech buffer around abortion centres is they're trying to obfuscate and conceal what abortion actually is. Because sadly, the clump of cells argument doesn't hold up past maybe a week or two, as soon as the baby starts to develop. And even then, it is still a life that is developing at that point. So I think we can all acknowledge that life begins at conception, as much as that may be a controversial take to some. But that means that they have rights, just the same as everybody else. Just because they are still developing within the womb does not mean that they don't have rights. After all, if I punched a pregnant woman in the gut, even though she was only 2 weeks pregnant, and as a result of that she miscarried, I would still probably be charged for a crime not only related to punching a woman in the stomach, but probably causing a miscarriage that probably could be considered murder as well. So it's rules in one way, but rules discarded completely in another. Standards for morals in one way, completely discarded when it's the woman's choice that she's doing this. And it's become very clear to me that the whole thing is just trying to conceal what abortion is, because it's murder. It's killing. It's killing, but we'll get to that later, because somebody just accepts it and acknowledges it. But anyway, I'll carry on. Cotton noted that pro-life and religious organisations have also been the targets of pro-abortion activist violence. It's not the Supreme Court justices targeted, not just them. Pro-abortion groups, including one calling itself Jane's Revenge, very peaceful name,
Irony,
have claimed credit for firebombing a pro-life organisation in Madison, Wisconsin, and numerous other firebombings, attacks and acts of vandalism against pro-life groups in more than a dozen states. The same group even attacked and vandalised the campaign office of a Republican congressman this past weekend. 3 separate churches in Maryland were attacked, all 3 vandalised and desecrated, and 2 were set on fire. Those attacks are currently under investigation, but are believed to be related to pro-abortion causes and groups. When are they going to get added to the terrorist lists, I wonder? Cotton also asked each of the witnesses whether they condemned the violence and vandalism by radical pro-choice groups. And the witnesses, all of the Democratic witnesses, they all said, oh, we condemn the violence, but also repealing Roe v. Wade is violence against women. How could you?
It's very much like Jeremy Corbyn when they ask him, oh, do you condemn anti-Semitism? Oh, I condemn all, but no, but do you do this? Oh, it's all. It's all.
But yeah, very specifically though, do you condemn this? Anyway, carrying on, as we mentioned, Elizabeth Warren has said the government should act against pregnancy resource centres and prevent them from operating, because I suppose you're trying to just force women who want to have children now to get abortions because you're sick at this point. I can't describe
Simone
it.
de Beauvoir position.
Yeah, I can't describe it in any other way other than you're sick. A woman who wants help for her pregnancy because she doesn't want to terminate the pregnancy, no, we can't allow that to happen. We need to push you to abortion because we're the good guys.
But also everyone should get free healthcare and a free job if you're unwilling to work.
Yeah, and it closes off as well with point 5, which is pointing out that Democrats used to be more pro-life. Someone Lee addressed his Democrat colleagues and reminded several that they once supported the pro-life message. The doomsday calls from those on the left are ignoring common sense and ignoring human instinct about protecting the most vulnerable among us. Members of this committee, including some who are now attacking the Dobbs decision, once shared these views. He then submitted a copy of a letter written by Durbin in 1989 when he was in the House of Representatives, in which he said, I believe we should end abortion on demand, and I continue to believe that the Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade should be reversed. So either this man has had a massive and disastrous change in his moral compass, or is just blowing wherever the political winds will take him, which is Washington.
Same with Biden. Yeah. Biden wrote almost exactly the same thing.
And it's even more impressive with Biden because he's an out-and-out Catholic, so... Well, I know.
No,
but still, that's what he classifies himself as.
He just likes the young boy pod.
Oh no! But if we move on, we've got the clips from this just to make it very, very clear how shocking some of the things that are being said is, and how shocking the things from the pro-abortion, the pro-baby murder side are, and some of the stuff that really, this is the sort of rhetoric that really started to change my mind on it, because it really shows how allowing abortions to go on, it really does devalue the idea of life in all other realms, because if this is how people are going to talk about the most vulnerable in society, how do you think they look at you? No wonder they can punch you in the face in the street because you said something they don't like and say that you're the violent one. No wonder that far-left Antifa radicals can shoot a Trump supporter in the street just because they think that your life is not worth it because you disagree with them, when this is what's allowed to go on. So this is Democrat Danny Davis saying about talking about forcing pro-life taxpayers to fund abortions. Play this clip.
I would think it would be like bringing light to darkness. Mm-hmm. I can recall living in rural America before the REA, and when things lit up, it was just totally different. Well, as we've heard, the Hyde Amendment is an unnecessary barrier to abortion care for people across the country, and repealing Hyde is a critical step in achieving economic and reproductive justice.
I don't see any justice in killing babies somehow.
No, especially considering a baby is entirely innocent and justice is meant to mean, without the social prefix, which means it's not justice, each person getting what they deserve, and no child deserves to be killed before they have a chance to walk in the world.
Exactly, and I think also, obviously, the framing there of bringing light into darkness, implying anybody who is pro-life is just evil. We are on Team Darkness. Ooh.
It's not even that, it's just the perversity of believing that I'm in favour of child sacrifice. That's right, I'm the good guy.
Mm-hmm. And the Satanic Church have literally come out and said that child sacrifice is one of their rituals because they're attempting to get it classified as a religious thing, so that it's protected under the First Amendment.
I can't wait for a religious exemption for the Taliban to take down 9/11 in the same framework.
I mean, if that's the standard we're going by. And then we've got this next one talking about abortion being liberating. So let's play this clip.
For some, abortion is liberation. There's a lot of good that comes from people's ability to access abortion, and I want to celebrate that.
Stunning and brave. Let's move on to this one, and let's move on to this next one. Let's play this.
Relatively smoothly, but what these restrictions are intended to do is try and stop people from having abortions. But abortion is healthcare. My abortion was the best decision I ever made. It was an act of self-love, and I'm here today to make sure that everybody who currently needs an abortion, who has had an abortion or will need an abortion, is not alone, no matter what the state tries to force upon us. Thank you so much, Ms. Lotus.
It's an act of self-love, don't you know? And seeing as let's extend this logic a bit further. So if you catch your spouse, for instance, cheating on you, that makes you feel really bad. So apparently, using this argument, killing them in retaliation is just an act of self-love. I mean, if we extend the logic, it all falls apart, doesn't it?
The tragedy of it is that she has now a moral incentive to never admit buyer's remorse, because if she does admit, oh my God, I've killed my own child, it's almost an unbearable weight to live with. So, that's just sad.
It is very sad, and I don't think these people understand the decisions they're truly making. And then we've got a classic one, the one that I thought I'd save the best to last, when they start to extend the argument. They start to test the logic of this, and they say, okay then, well, if you're for abortions up to the point of being able to give birth, what about infanticide? And let's play this clip.
I assume you agree with infanticide, the killing of a child, a perfectly healthy child at birth?
I don't accept the basis of that question, but I do believe abortion is health care.
I'm talking about, do you agree? I know, I get that, but do you agree, I mean, do you support infanticide, killing a child after he's born?
I do not agree with the basis of that question,
What's
but
the
I
basis?
do believe that abortion is health care.
Okay, so I'll take that as a yes, you do agree.
Yeah, so just completely trying to dodge the question, and this is what really shows to me that this becomes a very slippery slope, is that it does devalue all life on the basis of arbitrary measures of time. It's only when you're, it starts off with, okay, we want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare, and then it turns into up till the point of being able to give birth. And then if you want to extend it past that point, it's like up until the point that they're self-sufficient. Yep. Up until they're 5, up until they're 6, up until they're 7. You can extend it using this kind of argument, because the argument in and of itself is one against the right to life. and that's what really, really pushed me against it. But it's very interesting to see the perspective of those on the other side, because we really are experiencing two different conversations at the same time over the same thing. So if we go over, we've got LGBTQ Nation. Just scroll up. I'm not going to read anything from this. But we've got that exchange that I read out from earlier, where she was calling him Josh Hawley transphobic for asking if women are the ones who get pregnant and give birth. Yes. We've got LGBTQ Nation with this stunning headline: law professor humiliates Josh Hawley during Senate committee hearing. And it just makes me think you must have been watching a completely different video than I watched. It even includes, this article is basically just a transcript of that discussion, with nothing, no context, no added context to make it better. It literally just starts off by going, read this. Oh, she completely owned him. She really got him. She got one over on him. And it's just the discussion which I look at and go, this is nonsense.
Yeah, the
She's an
postmodernists were right about incompatible interpretations, unfortunately.
Sadly, yes. And then we go over to The Nation, which posted this article on Twitter last month, saying, when we withdraw from gestating, we stop the life of the product of our gestational labour. And there's something, this is where the language games really come into it, because there's something so dehumanising about referring to a baby in the womb as gestating, and
a product.
Abortion as the stopping the life of the product of our gestational labour. There is something disgustingly dehumanising, because leftists, for all their faults, they do recognise there is a lot of power in being able to manipulate reality, because we understand reality through the language that we use. So if all of a sudden it goes from killing a baby to stopping the life of the product of our gestational labour, and I imagine they would simplify that even further to stopping the gestational labour in the first place, it becomes very easy to disconnect. Really easy to disconnect from the reality of what you're actually talking about, and make it so that it is just a simple decision of, I don't want a baby right now, actually. Yeah, I probably should have, asked him to wear a condom, but I really don't feel like it, so I'm just going to go get rid of it, just like it's a spot that you're popping. It's disgusting. And if we go over to the next one, just let's take a look a little bit more at this article. And here we go. It's just full mask off. Abortion involves killing, and that's okay. I mean, at the very least, they are acknowledging what's going on here. And this is by Sophie Lewis. If you meet her in a bar, I'd keep your distance. To be pro-choice is to be against forced life. And this is where we end up. This is where the language games get played. Sadly, reality does force a lot of things on you, and being able to coexist with people in a society, which is what humans do because we're social creatures, does involve having to abide by certain standards that we all agree upon. And this is what leftism as a whole is arguing against, because what they want is freedom from restrictions. They don't want freedom from tyranny, they want freedom from reality. And if that reality includes killing your baby, then we'll deny it, and when it gets down to it, when you really push us to it, we'll go, fine, yeah, we are killing the baby, that's fine.
As Mao once said, nature is a revolutionary enemy, and this is the least natural thing I've ever seen.
It really is. I won't read too much of this because you can read it for yourself. It's quite stunning. But I'll just read the opening paragraph. So in 2019, I published a kind of manifesto, Full Surrogacy Now, whose opening line is, "It is a wonder we let fetuses inside us." Get that alone. That alone. The idea that the process of having a child is something that we should be against. Women shouldn't let fetuses inside us, as if that's
an occupying force.
Yes, to dismiss it to purely almost scientific terms that, to take all of the emotion out of it, all of what's sacred about it, is disgusting. The opening pages are given over to my extended paean to the processes of gestating in all its shockingly grisly biology, its everyday sublimity. Whereas in other species, a female can often discard or expel a pregnancy at will. Sorry to break it to you, we're not other species, as much as the furries might wish it were the case. In our species, a hyper-invasive placenta puts the gestator at risk of lethal hemorrhage. Maybe you should have thought about that before you got pregnant.
Why are you calling women gestators?
Well, because we can't say women,
yeah,
can we?
true. Yeah, fair point.
Locked down, our body becomes a daredevil participant in a wrestling match. We cannot easily quit. From this starting point, I make a case for rethinking human gestation as real and currently often deadly dangerous labour, deserving of maximal support. So we've got down to the idea that pregnancy is labour. Once again, leftists wrap back around to what we already knew. The controversial part is that a key correlate of viewing gestation as labour is that forcing someone to gestate against their will is forced labour. Oh no, I would have thought the communists would have been perfectly fine with this.
Well, if you consent to sex, you consent to the possibility of having a child. Therefore, it's not forced.
There you go.
Done.
There, sorted. And with this, to counter all of this, all I'm going to say is I stand with King Thomas, King Clarence Thomas. Look at what a jovial man he is. This is a man who knows he's just saved uncountable lives across the country. And you know what? God bless you, Clarence, and thank you for your service.
Absolute king.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the book clubs we do, this one on Douglas Murray's The War on the West. And if you want to follow what else I'm putting out, you can follow me on Getter at Callum on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.